Okay everybody, so I'm over here at one of my customer sites. I'm going to keep my voice a little bit low when I narrate. But what I'm going to show you how to do today is tear apart a Camdex JS-6300. This is one of the older machines at this customer. They have a couple of them. There's actually one right behind the camera. So, sorry, I'm a little winded, just ran up the stairs. And what we're doing today is first emptying out the brass that's in it, and we're going to replace the setup that's currently in it. Right now it's set up for 45 Colt, and what this machine does is it actually processes 45 Colt brass, and we're going to be replacing the bottom plate. So this applies to more or less any Camdex JS-6300 out there. This is actually a part that my company makes. This is just the Camdex processor plate. So I make it for the JS-6300 and I think like the Mark III. Don't quote me. But you can call and we'll have to figure out which model you have, and I can replace that. But either way, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you how to pull the JS-6300 apart and start doing a replacement on it, and we'll get this thing tooled up and we'll try it out. So the main reason why we did the processor plate, you can see this one has a slot, whereas the original just has a couple of holes in it. And the difference is that sometimes when punching out the primers, the primer doesn't get punched all the way out. So what will happen is that it'll get drag and it screws up the advancing mechanism. So that's the problem with that one. I might pull the camera around, or I do have my handy cam. We'll see which one works better. I know my lighting over here just really sucks because it's kind of dark outside. But wow, that's a pretty sunset. Or sun, whatever, sun coming through the clouds over there. So I'm going to get going here. Try to keep up. If you have any questions, ask in comments. I try to be pretty responsive. So first thing we need to do, which I'm actually going to do before I completely empty it, so I'm going to take the front cover plate off, which is actually going to help. Actually, I need to pull this tube off. Okay, so first thing that needs to come out, this is the case feed tube. There's a set screw in here. Usually we just kind of pre-tension it so that you can still pull the tube out if you need to. Just a little bit of a twisting motion there. Get that out. That can go back up top. So there's your case feed tube. Okay, 5:30 seconds. Okay, then there's your shell plate cover. That comes off. Clean that out before we put it back. Okay, now your shell plate comes off. One spring there. One spring there. Now this comes out, and one of the things you have to do is you have to slightly lower the head. More. There's your shell plate. Okay, let's bring that back up. Now here's the parts where it starts getting fun. So what I have to do, there's socket head cap screws right here. Once again, 5:30 seconds. So it's a 1024 screw. Thankfully, since I have the tube and most of the tools out, I can just go through the top and not have to bother with getting a angled key. This one's kind of fidgety, the one over on the end here. So a couple things we've done to this machine is we put this little thing there that makes sure the shell casings drop down because there's not enough weight. So I don't know if you can see that. Okay, so rear shell plate comes out. This is another product I make. Okay, now there are a couple screws here that are a little fidgety to get at, and they're on the bottom. So there's 4 of them, and then that'll remove this wear plate. And because of the way we have it set up, we're not going to need that anymore. I'm going to go find some other tools. So when it comes to working on Camdex and ammo load machines, this right here, or these kind of tool sets, are probably one of the most valuable things you can get. This is just a little ratcheting driver, so you can get into really tight spaces and remove screws. So the first couple aren't too bad, so we'll do those first. There's one. And right on the ground. That's fine, we're changing thread pitch here, so I don't actually need these screws anymore. So there's one wear plate. Screw number 3. And now the problem is this other one is located right in here. This is actually the top of it right here. Set to tighten. Okay, and then that is our second wear plate. As you can see, these things get all gross because, well, they're used for case processing. So you got dirty brass and all kinds of other stuff going through there. Yeah, you can see kind of how badly worn this is from the primer's not coming out and it trying to stick. It actually sometimes will cut the ejected primer if it doesn't come all the way out. Okay, let's clean some of the goo out of here. Doesn't have to be super clean, but let's try to make it nice. Throw my wrench on the ground, and we'll go with a screw. And let's see. That goes in there about like so. And I gave it a little bit of wiggle. So the originals had wiggle in here, just so you could kind of line everything up. Because originally you had these 2 plates that went like this, and there was a gap in between, and the gap is where the primer bar rides. So since we're using it for processing, we're not doing any priming on the machine, so we're just using a single solid piece. So we'll take those parts, we'll recondition them and get them ready to use on the other machine that's behind the camera. Okay, I need to go grab the new screws right here. So really the only difference with this plate is we went from using a 1024 socket head cap screw to a 1032. I like the finer thread pitch. It's a little bit easier in the machine shop to cut. It comes out a little bit better. And we're using a button head so that we have a little bit more clearance. This probably works better if I use the right tool. Oh yeah, that is right about perfect. Okay, 2 more. So this, damn, it's another part I made years ago, and we held it down with these dual sticky carpet stickers, which are actually, they've held on way better than I ever expected them to. That's kind of impressive. So I just pulled that off. I'll put it back in when I'm done. Just makes it that much easier to get to this screw. So I'm going to check and make sure these don't stick up very much, if at all. Okay, so there's that. So we'll take our rear show rail, which is starting to get a little bit worn. So maybe we'll look at replacing that again in the near future. That goes on there like so. We'll use, let's not do that one right now, let's do that one. Let's do that one. Oh. Okay, I dropped one of the screws inside the box down here. So, and if you're wondering why the lighting just got worse, it's because the overhead lighting just turned off because I've been, I don't know, sitting here working for too long. Okay. So now we gotta drop the head there, put that back in, and then hook the springs back up. good there. Okay. Then we put our cover plate back on. And then once again, this one has 5 screws. Take our 5/32 wrench. These things you really don't have to put a lot of torque on, so, and they're small screws, so if you over torque them, you just bust the head off, and then you gotta go find a way of removing the busted screw. So I don't recommend doing that. Okay, so let's make sure everything moves the way it's supposed to. Drop chute back in, and first I need to put the shell tube in. I'll just connect that up there up top. Okay, let me get the other parts. Are you at bottom dead center? Yes, you are. Okay, so sorry about bumping the camera there. So these tools in here, these are actually not even really dies, they're just holders. Because if you don't have those in here on this particular machine, the casings will get caught on the shell plate, and then just all hell breaks loose. So, but these are just mostly made out of soft, crappy steel. They're a hair oversized, so they don't fit super well. Okay, decapping assembly. Goes in the actual size die. Little tooly tool. Snug it up a little bit, make sure it doesn't decide to go anywhere. God, that's amazing. That stuff just continues to stick. So I was just putting the hooba jube back on. Okay, so let's try it out and see how it's working. Okay, so the basic operation of this press, even though there's no primers or anything, I just like to keep my safety glasses on whenever I run these things. Makes me feel better. So there's a linkage in here which spins around and drives this plate up and down. This bell crank, which is the part over here, advances the shell slide. So a couple things when you're taking the machine apart and putting it back together, you have to make sure that this is clocked properly. So otherwise what will happen is it'll come down to the bottom and then the shell casing will hang up as it tries to advance out. And that usually just ends in crying. It's fairly easy to adjust. What else is there? Making sure this is at a proper level so it's not interfering with the shell plate which I did not adjust that, so it should be fine. Make sure this is moving freely. It's kind of a big one. The other thing you have to adjust sometimes is this little catch over here on the far side. I make a replacement part that has 2 adjustment screws and some bigger slots so you can adjust it a little bit better. And I do make replacement catches for it. This one's starting to get pretty worn out, so I'm probably going to have to replace it soon. So let's get some shell casings in it and see how it runs. So this is pretty much our setup here. When you're first feeding casings in it, I like to just pull this back to make sure it's going up. And sometimes it'll just smash one for no good reason anyway.